Welcome to AXREM Insights, developing healthcare through MedTech and innovation. Join Melanie Johnson and Sully Edgington as they talk with our industry leaders and experts.
Hello, I'm Melanie Johnson and I'm here with Sully Edgington. Welcome to our AXREM Patient Monitoring Manifesto special. Today we have the pleasure to be speaking to Yasmeen Mahmoud, business leader at Philips UKI. Welcome Yas, and thank you for being on our podcast. Let's get started by getting to know you a little better. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks ladies. Really excited to be on the podcast today. So my name's Yasmeen Mahmoud. I live in Wiltshire with my husband and my dog. I'm the business leader for patient monitoring at Philips. I joined Philips about, I think it's 8.5 years ago now on the grad scheme actually. And we've kind of worked in various roles through sales, marketing, kind of more business roles more recently, mainly within the patient monitoring space. So kind of know the space quite well. I'm also actually a member of our Wellbeing Champions at Philips and our Inclusion and Diversity Committee. So just really passionate also about making sure that people are kind of focused on their mental well-being and their physical well-being, but also that they can really be their authentic selves where they work. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions on that. Number one, what dog do you have? Because I'm a big dog lover.
So you might have heard of them actually. So she's an Australian Kelpie. So I think everyone get onto your phones, do a bit of Googling. So they're kind of like a collie kind of Australia, basically. So a lot of energy, very, very smart, but she's a rescue as well. So yeah, a few quirks, but we love her.
Super. And obviously, you said you started there as a grad student. So where were you before that? What uni did you go? What did you study?
Yeah, so I went to Cardiff Uni. So I studied business management there. So pretty kind of generic, but my parents are both kind of from the medical world. So I knew I probably would always end up involved in kind of healthcare in some capacity. And then the grad scheme came up for Philips and I thought, perfect, business plus kind of healthcare. And stuck ever since. So yeah, it's a brilliant industry for me, I think.
Great, thanks, Yaz. And today's podcast, obviously, talking about the Patient Monitoring Manifesto, which I'm really proud that we brought the patient monitoring companies together, and the group has already become so proactive, which is fantastic to see. And you've been obviously a really active member of that group. So thinking about Patient Monitoring Manifesto, it talks about the 4 C's, with the first being consistency across the NHS. How can a lack of consistency affect industry dealing with the NHS? But how can this also impact the patient, do you think?
Yeah, so I actually really want to start with the patient here, because I think ultimately we all may be a patient at some stage, or we know someone that's going to be a patient. And I think as a patient, you want to know that wherever you go in hospital, whatever part of the country, that you end up kind of getting the best care possible. And I think when you work in the industry, sadly, you do come to realize that that's not always the case. And that's, based on various things. So I think in the manifesto, we talk about, for example, the difference in infrastructure within kind of different hospitals and different trusts. A lack of infrastructure means that you can't invest in the technology that would actually make a difference to care. So there you directly see kind of the impact there that has on the patient if you then turn up at one of those hospitals that doesn't have the infrastructure. So for me, it really comes back to the patient. We also see kind of a difference in kind of procurement of devices within the industry as well, which again, you may think, okay, how does that impact the patient? But we can see kind of severe delays on procuring technology because of kind of varying ways of procurement styles or frameworks. And that, again, just puts that delay on the patient getting the care that they need through not having access to technology. So for me, we see the frustration from industry, but I think it really does come back to that patient point of view, and the fact that with that lack of consistency, you can't guarantee that you will get the top care you need when you go into those hospitals. And that's what we want to change, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you say, I've been a patient a lot. I've got a few health conditions and had a lot of surgery in the past. So I've probably been hooked up to one of the Philips patient monitoring machines on many occasions.
Yeah.
And you want to feel that you're safe and well looked after. And, like you say, that's really important. And I think that a lot of the work that we do at AXREM is very patient focused, and having come from, previously non-health industries, the sales is all about the bottom line, but it's so different in the health sector.
Absolutely.
The amount of research and development that's done, and the amount of investment that's put into that, as well as the real focus around even on the design of the products to be really patient focused and to make for a better patient experience. That's really important. I think when I was reading the manifesto, once you guys had kind of all drafted it up, I was really shocked to see in the manifesto that the UK have one of the lowest number of hospital beds per 100,000 population. With this being the case, how can patient monitoring help where there is a lack of capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these stats first kind of became apparent to me during COVID when it was looking at kind of ITU capacity and those beds. But yeah, I think in the manifesto, we see that in the UK, we have 2.43 per 100,000 population versus kind of, other European countries. We see France, I think it's 5.7, and in Germany, 7.8 actually. So we see a massive discrepancy there. And it does mean that, and obviously these are the stats and the headlines that you see in the news, that we have an issue with that capacity, and that we do have issues with people getting beds when they need them. So that's again where kind of technology comes into play. We need to make sure ultimately that everyone that is in a bed needs to be there, but is there for only the period of time they need to. So they're not kind of bed blocking and they get out as quickly as possible, just to make sure that, everyone is getting the right level of care they need at the right time. So how does patient monitoring come into this then? So I think it is about, like I said, making sure that people are getting the right care at the right time. Traditional kind of patient monitoring, we see that it's all about kind of the clinical decision support tools on those and the data that they pull through. So it's making sure that clinicians get access to the right data at the right time so they can make those decisions and kind of get the patients in and out of either theatres or ITU as quickly as possible. But we're even moving into a space now where we're considering kind of remote monitoring as well. And this is about kind of early warning scoring, making sure that where possible we get early admission and early intervention to patients that need to come into hospital, because we know that as the earlier we get that intervention, the kind of better the outcomes will be and the less they will need to stay kind of within general ward spaces. But also that we look at the other side as well, where we also enable patients to get out of hospital as quickly as possible. Patients don't want to be in hospital for weeks and weeks on end. Neither do the caregivers. Nobody wants to be hooked up to a monitor for weeks on end. So it is just about that technology enabling patients to get the care they need at the right time, but also get them kind of back out to their houses or care homes as quickly as possible as well. And I see kind of the reliance on data, on technology being huge based on our capacity. We don't have the ability to just say, oh yeah, you can stay in a bed for an extra 2 weeks while you get back, get healthier. We do really need to invest in this technology to support the caregivers. Yeah. With getting patients in and out of hospital as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think there's three main points that I've kind of just jotted down and kind of pulled out of what you've just said. So I think that I talk a lot about this, especially in terms of some of the products and services our members provide around AI, that innovation and technology can create some efficiencies within the system. Absolutely. Which is going to help with the workforce, but also means that the patient is going to be monitored better. I think in terms of the patient, I think obviously, I've spent a lot of time in hospital in the past, and after day 2 or 3, you just want your own bed. You want to be around your family. You're always I know whenever I come home after an operation, I always feel so much better once I get home. And I think that that's really important for a patient's mental health and well-being, is, them being in their own environment with their own things and bed and family really is important. So I think that's a really key point to getting people home as quickly as possible. And I think you touched on something we've been talking about in the patient monitoring group around obviously getting people home, and they can still be monitored at home. So I know that certainly members of the patient Patient Monitoring Group provide products around the virtual wards or hospitals at home, as I'm hearing it being called now as well. So I think that's really important, that if somebody can go home and be monitored, obviously that's going to be better for the taxpayer, it's going to be better for the patient, it's going to be better for the hospital and the workforce, and it's going to be better for waiting lists and everything else. So I think absolutely I can see that there's going to be more of that going forwards.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you touched on virtual wards or hospital at home, because it's definitely been kind of a buzzword the last few years. But I'm really hoping it becomes more than a buzzword, and we see more investment in this space, because I think ultimately this could completely change kind of what healthcare looks like for all of us. It probably will need significant investment in both spaces for a period of time that run parallel alongside each other. So you have the traditional kind of in-hospital investment, but also this new funding for this stream. But ultimately, I think that move towards that, preventative healthcare model and that home healthcare model will completely shift what the landscape looks like. So hoping we hear a little bit more about that in the coming years as well but I think we've seen it in kind of the Labour manifesto and some information they're putting out on the NHS as well. So it seems like it's becoming more than a buzzword, which is great for us to see as well.
Absolutely. And I feel confident things like that will get rolled out, because ultimately with a workforce crisis in the NHS and a lack of beds, that can only be one of the solutions. And that needs to be where there's some investment. I've also seen a change we're kind of doing that full circle. I remember when I was very small that there used to be a lot of community hospitals and community care. And we're obviously seeing in, with the big modalities and, community diagnostic centres, and it's becoming much more community-based care and keeping people away from hospitals. And that, again, can only be good for the patient, makes it more accessible. I think that has to be the way forward. So virtual wards absolutely have a place to play. And obviously as AXREM, we're going to do everything we can to engage, in that work at the earliest opportunity for you guys.
Brilliant, yeah.
Okay. So we say in the manifesto, investing in connectivity will unlock the potential of medical equipment. Can you give a bit more detail around that and what are the benefits to that?
Yeah, so I think this is probably kind of linked into the previous conversation as well. But connectivity is crucial to kind of get to the stage that we want to with medical devices. So by connectivity, what do we mean? So we kind of mean within hospital settings, all the data that comes through from patient monitors, but also kind of vents and infusion pumps, all linking through to electronic patient records, to mean that we just have constant data flowing through and also being stored as well at hospital site. It enables, again, clinicians to make much more data-driven decisions on patients based on the data that they've got access to. But it also means that we can start in the background using, and I think Sally, you mentioned AI, kind of looking at kind of the trends of that data as well, and seeing if we're seeing particular trends with patient groups or kind of certain illnesses. So it just means that we're making a lot more data-led decisions through this connectivity of patient data. It then also means that, again, as we talk about like hospitals at home and kind of virtual wards as well, that connectivity beyond the hospital walls, that we again build up that data. We start seeing kind of trends much earlier, like that early intervention piece, the early warning scoring piece. So it's just that connectivity piece enables our kind of end users or our clinicians to make earlier decisions, quicker decisions, faster decisions, maybe decisions that we would have missed in the past. And then again, coming back to that patient, it means that we get the best for the patient as well. So kind of looked into the capacity piece as well, with using tech to just help drive those decisions.
I think as well, technology talking to each other, I suppose that's the most simple way, because I'm not a technical person, really is important, because and I've seen that what's great now is different OEMs technology can talk to each other, if you like, and that's what it needs to be, again, for the patient, because hospitals have lots of different technology and innovations from lots of different suppliers, and the fact they can all now connect together is really important. But I also think around connectivity, there's that consistency across trusts allowing that connectivity, and that's where the patient may not always get the best experience if a hospital hospital doesn't have the infrastructure to be able to do that. And I also think around this subject as well, and we talk about it a lot in AXREM, is cybersecurity. Obviously, that the whole connectivity piece, there's always that danger, and we're seeing that the threat of cybersecurity is higher than it's ever been. And obviously that is a real focus for us and as AXREM, and we have a cybersecurity working group. We've got what we call our Cobra type committee. So if there was a cyber attack, we bring all our members together to share intelligence so that you guys can make informed business decisions. So I think the connectivity piece for me, there's kind of a whole host of things all around that subject as well.
Yeah. And yeah, you touched on the different vendors, different OEMs, equipment kind of talking to each other. Yeah, again, as a consumer with things like Alexa, right? In terms of that we can now get our lights talking to our music talking to, I think you can even connect to like fridges and stuff now. We can get everything talking to each other, right? And it makes life a lot more simple. You don't have to have like multiple different apps on your phone and everything. And that's kind of the direction of travel within the hospital setting as well. If we can get everything talking to each other, kind of have one kind of source of truth that a clinician can look at, it's a lot more simpler than having to have different apps or different systems that they have to log into and remember their password. So it's the same kind of theme on that. But you also kind of triggered me as well, Sally, in the sense of we're also through this kind of this data collection, I think you'll see a lot through what the NHS is doing now in terms of even opening some of our records up to us as patients. So allowing us to have a lot more insight into our own health. And I think the idea behind that is kind of, again, that if we can see a lot more of this through our own records, you can log on now and see your prescriptions and you can see kind of all your blood test results and stuff like that. It also gives us as patients a lot more kind of ownership and kind of engagement as well in our own health, and the idea that maybe we can help that preventative piece of driving that forward. So I think, there's so many facets to this connectivity piece. We could probably talk about it all day, actually, the more you trigger me to think of other things.
Great. So our patient monitoring special focus group obviously is fairly new, as I mentioned at the beginning, in AXREM. How have you found the engagement in the group, and what do you see as the benefit of being part of the group personally, but also for your company, Philips?
So I've loved being part of the group, actually. Firstly, I guess, personally, just meeting different people in the industry. Typically, previously you'd maybe see people at events, or you'd see people kind of at show and tells at customers, but it'd very, very much be like a passing visit. How are you? But being able to really spend time with people has been fantastic. It's amazing, I think, as industry, how much we actually have in common. You sometimes kind of think, oh yeah, we're working in the same space, there's a bit of competition there, but actually there is so much we have in common. There is so much we can do to influence kind of the healthcare setting that we work in together. So I think we're really realizing that, we are, it sounds very cliche, but we are kind of stronger together, and there's a lot more that we can do. And especially, again, coming back to that patient piece, ultimately, if we want the patient to have the best care at the best time, we need to come together. So I think for me personally, but also for Philips, we're recognizing that there is strength in numbers. We have a lot of similar pains that we can start addressing together. But also, we can make real change by having these conversations. So it's brilliant.
Thanks, Yaz. I really appreciate that feedback. And I think I was really surprised when we had our first meeting with the patient monitoring group at how much synergy there is with other areas of AXREM. The pinch points are the same across, all of the companies. And I think that as an industry voice, like you say, we are stronger together. And with AXREM now growing, at a rapid pace, we're becoming even more representative, and that makes us an even bigger industry voice, and I very much appreciate all the input that you've personally put into the group, because it is a really positive group. And like you say, bringing highly competitive companies together can be challenging, but with our competition law and guidance and everything else, we make it work. And it's a really friendly group. And I would say even sometimes I come away from the meetings having felt like I had a bit of fun as well. So it's all good.
It's amazing as well. I bumped into Chris from GE in the airport a few months ago, and it's amazing now that I've got that network. People just pop up all over the place. He was on his holiday somewhere, and I was like, oh, so we had a nice chat. So agree, it's a really friendly bunch.
You bet. So now for my quirky question, Yaz. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
So Funny that this was your quirky question, because I was listening to another podcast this morning and they also brought this up, and they were saying apparently they've done a lot of research into people that want to have their superpowers flying versus people that want to be invisible, and apparently it says a lot about your personality traits. But mine is neither of those. It's actually, I think, being able to teleport. It was such a rainy day yesterday, and I was just thinking, if I could just teleport somewhere on my lunch break and just be in the sun for like an hour and just then come back, and then even for like traveling around the country for like customer meetings and stuff. I hate it when you're like, I've got to drive back. So for me, teleporting would be such a lifesaver.
Do you know what? That is an amazing one, actually. Like you say, just to click your fingers and be somewhere else and then come back again half an hour later. Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, no, that's a good one. I like that one.
So you can make that come true.
Yeah, you could be the new Doctor Who.
Yes.
You have your own TARDIS.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Yas. I think we've all found out loads more about yourself today and the priorities of our patient monitoring manifesto and the special focus group. If you want to speak to us about the manifesto, please do reach out to myself or Melanie. A big thanks to Yas for being our guest today, and thank you to all our listeners.
Join Sally and I later this summer for some more AXREM Insight podcasts. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe or feel free to share the podcast with friends.